Thank you for staying with us. Time now for the news belt. And in our first story, public utility companies have proposed an upward review in tariffs to the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority following what they say is an increase in their cost of operation. Now, utility tariffs have not seen any increase for some time now, and the companies want an upward adjustment. According to the managing director of the Ghana Water Company Limited, Dr. Clifford Ebrima, the company requires more resources to be able to transform its operations and be more efficient.
How many times have you, even this year, how many times has fuel price gone up? And if you take a graph of 2017 to 2021, don't even come with the 2022, and look at the graph of the tariff, it's going to be a straight line. And you are aware that the cedi has depreciated, and all our items are imported, including chemicals. Today, the chemicals have increased by more than 60%. Ghana Water Company does not have the capacity to transfer this cost onto the consumer. The PURC reviews tariff every 2 years. So how are you going to make profit out of this? I know you've made some proposals to the PURC. Are you asking for upward adjustment? What exactly are you seeking? Yeah, we are asking for upward adjustment because today, as we said, GWCL is taking care of issues that should have been taken care of 50 years ago. GWCL is taking care of today to make sure that we are efficient, we can deliver water to the consumer at the right time, right quality. And we are also then taking care of the company, such that tomorrow it will still be in existence to serve the people of Ghana. And so we are doing three things with the limited resources that we have.
Well, the Northern Electricity Distribution Company has also met the Executive Secretary of the PURC, Dr. Ishmael Aka, with a similar demand. Let's listen to Engineer Noble Domenu, who is Director of Commercial at NEDCO.
We buy the energy and we sell to customers. So there's a cost. So in that vein, about 70% thereabout goes into power purchase. So what it means is that we have a chunk of our revenue that goes into power purchase. So periodically we look at the dynamics, cost with the revenue. Then based on that, we submit proposals to PURC. So we have done that proposal to PURC based on the cost and the revenue. So PURC is the regulator. They will look at it, and based on our situation, they will give us what is required. To help us. The proposal that we have given to PURC, at this stage, I would not want to indicate that because it's still going through a stage. Let me indicate that when it comes to tariff review, decision will be taken based on the submission that we made.
Let's move away from service providers, and the Kumasi High Court is due to hear the first witness in a case in which a lecturer at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology's Petroleum Department is accused of kidnapping his wife, a Lands Commission official. The Attorney General's office informed the court that the first of the three witnesses to be called by the state would be a teaching assistant who worked with Dr. Wilberforce Nkrumah Agri, the main suspect in the case. There is more in this report put together by Ohiming Teria.
Dr. Agri is also accused of deceit of a public officer. He is on trial with two other people, including a man who claims to have found and sold Rodalyn Amuadako's Infinix phone. State Attorney Charles Edward Irinchi, however, pleaded with the court to restrain the accused from contacting the witness to avoid any interference. It comes after the key accused person and his counsel attended a successful case management session on Tuesday. Rodalyn Amuadako, the wife of Dr. Wilberforce Nkrumah Agri, has been missing since August 30, 2021. She is a mother of two who works for the Lands Commission's Kumasi office as a senior lands administrative officer. Dr. Agri was discharged after appearing in the Asokwa District Court on provisional charge of kidnapping, but was re-arrested to face new charges of kidnapping and deceit of a public officer in the Kumasi High Court. After many attempts by his lawyers, Dr. Agri, who has been held in prison custody, has been denied bail. State prosecutors provided all disclosures to defense counsel including evidence they expect to use against Dr. Agri and the other two defendants during the trial. The court adjourned the hearing to April 26, 2022. Meanwhile, the family of the missing Rodalyn Amuadakun says it is satisfied with the court processes so far. Her mother, Cecilia Obenewa Apia, sat through hearing for the second time. She took time to address Friends of Rhoda, a pressure group seeking justice for the missing Rodalyn. The mother says she has confidence in the Attorney General and the court for justice.
The Attorney General's departments are doing their work. They are very, very active, and they are working as expected. So we have hope in them. So far as the Attorney General's work is concerned, they are working.
From Kumasi, for Joy News, Oimenteria reporting.
Now, scientists at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology have confirmed the presence of a probable cancer-causing substance known as acrylamide in samples of bread analyzed. Now, lead scientist and head of the Department for Food Science and Technology, Professor Isaac Williams Ofosu, says the substance is relatively everywhere and can be found in heat-treated foods, including potato chips, some breakfast cereals, biscuits, and roasted and fried foods. Medical correspondent Dr. Netta Pashram now reports.
Acrylamide was first detected in foods sampled in Sweden in 2002. This substance has the potential to cause cancer. Also, it affects the brain and other parts of the nervous system.
Acrylamide forms from the three major components of food. Here we are talking about carbohydrate, then we are talking about proteins, then we're also talking about fats and oils. Acrylamide can form from each one of them. Okay, not to take you too deep, carbohydrate alone, when you heat carbohydrate alone, indeed, acrylamide can generate from it.
The present study sought to determine the exposure and health risks bread pose to regular consumers.
We found that all these indicators were below the recommended thresholds, meaning that we have to educate our people. We have to police our bakeries so that they will do the right things. By simply changing the conditions of processing, heating time and temperature, we are able to also manage the levels of these acrylamide levels that can be found in food. The truth of the matter is that as far as cancer risk is concerned, there is zero tolerance. But for practicality, risk said that the values are very low, in the region of greater or less than 1 in 1 million. If we say we have 1 in say 10 million, hallelujah, it will be very nice for us. So all we need to do is to manipulate time and temperature to bring the levels of acrylamide formation that can be formed as low as possible.
Now, what would be your response if a Class 5 pupil questioned you about how you would cope with learning under trees and writing or sitting the same exams with children from well-endowed schools? Well, this was the question 12-year-old Napare Suleiman asked our Northern Regional correspondent when she interviewed him on the state of his school. In this report, Martina Bugri tells the story of how the Wantugu Tunteya Primary is housed under 2 trees in the community.
You know, those who sit in class and we those who sit under trees cannot be the same. When the sun comes up, we run home and they sit in their classrooms to learn. So when we meet to write exams, they will pass better than us.
This is Napari Sulemana, a primary 5 pupil of the Wantugu Tunteya Primary School. He is one of the 193 children from the school who have big dreams of becoming nurses, teachers, among other professions. But it comes with challenges each day, where the weather determines whether you can fulfill your dream.
The sun directly falls on us with the heat, making us not able to learn. So we are forced to run home. We close at 1:30 p.m., but we go home before the time because of the weather. Whenever it rains, we are forced to go home because there's no classroom. And if we return after the rain, the place will be wet and we can't sit down. Meanwhile, our colleagues in other schools with structures are learning.
School infrastructure plays a critical role in determining the quality of learning, but that cannot be said of rural communities who solely depend on government schools, which sometimes come with classrooms in a pitiful state or in some cases no classroom. Tumteya Primary School is one of such schools. Established in 2009 by a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer, Anna Fred, it was to teach children the basics so that they can be able to grasp and join the upper primary. It was later absorbed by the Ghana Education Service in 2013. But since the takeover, the school is yet to receive just a single infrastructure. The assemblyman for the area, Isahaku Abdul Karim, said his predecessor had written several letters to the assembly for help. That is yet to yield any result, adding that he has also written to the assembly.
I wrote a letter to the DC and I was not getting a response. So I later asked the PTA and the SMC chairman for us to go and meet the DC personally. So when we went and met him, the DC admitted us and he directed me to rewrite another letter.
The district chief executive for Tolong, Hussein Isalifu Isi Fumosi, has assured that the school will receive the attention it deserves when the assembly's budget is approved.
I made sure that that school was being captured in that composite budget, so that when the budget is approved for us, we will be in a position to put up better classroom accommodation for them. In any case, sometimes we have other projects that might come on our way, which is not directly under our composite budget. So I have it in mind that if we have any early project outside the composite budget, I will make sure that we go to the place and put a befitting classroom for them.
These children are supposed to have the basics and go up to the upper primary to write the final examination with their colleagues in well-endowed schools. The question they've been posing is how will they be able to cope when they get there? For Joy News, Martina Bugri reporting.
Now, the Coalition of Concerned Volta Youth has protested what they described as the reckless allocation of a state land in Ho to a private company. The group wonders why the Lands Commission decided to allocate the land, which is being occupied by government bungalows, to a private developer who has the finances to procure land in any part of the city. There is more in the following report, including a response from the Lands Commission.
Occupants of government bungalows on a 2.5-acre land along the whole stadium road were served notice to vacate the structures, saying the land has been allocated to a private company. This development was met with a public outcry in the Volta region, with residents learning the private company was first located a section of the defunct state construction company yard in Ho. A pressure group, Coalition of Concerned Youth, registered their displeasure and expressed disgust at the decision to relocate the private company estate land in a prime area. Stanley Glate is the convener.
What we know is that on records and per the document available, the SCC yard has been allocated to Malcolm, 2.5 acres of land. Out of the total 6 acres of land has been given to Malcolm. So it means that invariably is left with 3.5 acres of land there. That can be used for any other development. There is no understanding in this very act. A state land given not to a government institution, but a private developer, a private company, They have the money to buy land. Why would we demolish bungalows that are housing government officials, people who are working for this country? Why must we demolish those structures and give it out? Must we continue giving out government lands to private interest? I don't think so. That is why the coalition has come to stay and will ensure that the right thing is done. Nobody will take us for a ride this time. The youth are poised for action. And from here we involve our stakeholders, our chiefs, to join this fight, to stop them from selling this bungalow together with the land, so that this land can be here for us.
However, the Volta Regional Lands Commissioner explained his outfit was compelled to relocate the private developer to the said land after the Asogli state expressed interest in the SCC land. Fred Kwame Asari, JoyNews. Oh.
And on that note, we draw the curtains on the news. Up next, we have the news review. Do stay with us. Thank you for joining us for the news review on the AM show. A number of matters on my mind, and shortly we'll be joined by Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, who is a political scientist and also head of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. But I've been thinking about the utility service providers, for example, saying that they want to up the ante, they want to increase their charges. And it's on the back of realistic things happening. Fuel prices have gone up. Their cost of operation have also gone up. So realistically, you would expect that they would want to inch it up a bit. But on the other hand, you put side by side the economic circumstances we're all grappling with. The fuel prices and the increasing cost of everything from food to services to even purchasing credits is not only impacting them, it is impacting ordinary folk like you, like me. So how do we mitigate the situation? And that's where the PURC comes in. But if you look at the performance of some of our SOEs, the abysmal performance, I might add, over the years, and the fact that we want to sustain our core state-owned enterprises like the Ghana Water Company Limited, like the Electricity Company of Ghana, which are bleeding, by the way. Can you imagine it? When Dr. Asah-Asante joins me, I would like to find out from him how he feels. My own alma mater, the University of Ghana, owes ECG up to about, 33 million Ghana cedis. What are the interventions from governments? And because it is semi-autonomous, the finance ministry has been in debt, the Kotoka International Airport, among a plethora of state agencies. Some thoughts just running through my head this morning, but I'll be addressing those with Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante when he joins the conversation. Well, let's start with the Daily Graphic newspaper. Boss records profits 2 years running. That's according to the managing director. And this matter has become topical and polemic as well. That's the word I was looking for, because they are putting profits, yes, but we're also looking at losses over the years, and we're wondering, are we actually making profit per what SIGA put out? But let's get into that story. It's on page 16 of the Daily Graphic newspaper. So it says, Boss records profits 2 years running, and the Bulk Oil Storage and Transportation Company Limited recorded profit before tax of 9.84 million Ghana cedis for 2020. That was against the estimated 30 million Ghana cedis recorded for last year, and the loss, and here's where it comes in, of 158.47 million in 2019. The managing director of Bost, Edwin Provençal, said the positive profit before tax obtained in 2020 and the estimated positive outturn for last year implied a massive turnaround of the operational fortunes of the company. He therefore described the 400 million Ghana cedi loss reported in some circles as erroneous. And he spoke to the Daily Graphic and said he showed the 5-year revenue and profitability audited position of the company, which indicated that the strategic oil storage company recorded 632.65 million Ghana cedis of revenue in the year 2020, with a corresponding profit before tax of 9.84 million. But why should we even be here? Why should we have, these disparities? What Siga is saying, what Bost is saying, the devil is always in the detail. Well, let me say a very good morning to Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante. Doc, can you hear me?
Good morning.
Right. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Right. I was just sharing my thoughts on, the power producers or service providers, utility service providers, ECG, Ghana Water Company Limited. They are all saying we need to increase our service charges, basically what you pay for water and what you pay for electricity. But at the same time, we have quite a number of issues to grapple with when it comes to the economic situation. Right now, people are battling with so many things. So where the PURC will land, that's where the problem is. What is your quick take on that? They are saying we must increase because our cost of providing the services we provide has gone up, but at the same time, the ordinary Ghanaian is also bleeding. Doc?
It's a difficult situation, but PURC, what can they do? This is the stark reality that is facing everybody. So we must be able to make sure that we get these things fixed. But I don't blame PURC. That's the situation. And then I also understand the harsh economic realities of the time. So the balancing is where the difficulty lies. But I know we shall overcome.
We shall overcome. I love your optimism, Doc. I love your optimism. You're always so optimistic, and it's something that I feel all of us had a bit more of in terms of the dosage. But some quick issues I just want you to look at. So tied to that same situation, the Ghana Water Company Limited lost some 1 billion Ghana cedis in the last year under review in terms of state-owned enterprises. And some have said that we should focus on the ECGs, the Ghana Water Company Limiteds, and all the others that are not performing. We should privatize them. What is your quick take on that?
Privatization is a good thing, but we must work it very carefully, because otherwise the poor, the needy, the vulnerable, they will suffer the more. Much as we want to support that effort must also be put in place to make it better for the ordinary man. And that's where welfare policies come in. So that, yes, those who can afford will be in a better position to pay, and those who cannot, a little push or a little cushion would be appropriate for them, so that at the end of the day, people don't suffer too much.
My final bit to you before we get back to the Daily Graphic newspaper. It is interesting because the University of Ghana is said to owe power producer ECG up to about 33 million Ghana cedis. How do you think this happened? I mean, I know you are not the vice chancellor or anything of the sort, but I'm just asking, since you're in that institution, and I'm sure it's not just the University of Ghana, my own alma mater, but I'm wondering how institutions can be this indebted. Mind you, in recent times, even the finance ministry has been indebted to ECG, the Kotoka International Airport, among other state institutions. How do you think this happens, especially as you are semi-autonomous? And how do you feel an entity like the University of Ghana can be brought out of such circumstances?
It's a difficult one. I have no idea. As we got there, I have virtually no idea. So this one, spare me that. Not because I don't want to comment on it, but I have no idea.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doc. Let's get back to the Daily Graphic. Enforcing city bylaws. 3,500 response team starts work. And the Greater Accra Regional Coordinating Council is deploying 3,500 member city response team across the region to enforce bylaws on sanitation and discipline, starting from Tuesday, April 19 this year. The first batch of 1,000 men and women who have completed a month's training at the Ghana Armed Forces Bundase training camp will be put to work in the Central Business District and some strategic parts of the national capital, Accra. Doc, I was one of those asking where the Greater Accra Regional Minister had gone in terms of, some of these things. Well, he's back. Are you excited?
Very much so, because a clean city gives us hope, and then we'll be in the right environment to deliver. It is important that at a point in time we have leaders who said that, damn the consequence. I'm prepared to make sure that we have a very clean environment that will be supportive of productivity. I am for it. Except that some of these things, when you are carrying them out, you always must be mindful of the fact that there are rules of the game. Don't cross the line, just apply the rules and you'll be there. And I don't see why it is difficult for we as citizens not to abide by these rules. Because look, these laws are meant to regulate our conduct and to give us what? A better life. So why do you want to break them until somebody gets up and said, I want to enforce it? I am with the assembly. They should go ahead and make sure that these things are done. At the end of the day, the benefits will get to everybody.
The benefits will accrue to all of us. I have two quick stories that are tied to this whole bit about cleaning the city and maybe making the city overall better in terms of planning. The first one has to do with, I think it was on Monday. If you look at the Daily Graphic newspaper, one of the major issues there at the bottom left corner, they had a photo of cattle, cows, on our streets, major streets, the Graphic Road and others. Obviously, if we want to make Accra the cleanest city in Africa, we ought to tackle some of these menaces because they can cause accidents, they could gore somebody. I mean, so many things could happen. I'm sure you've encountered these before.
Exactly so. Yeah, a number of times. And this one, I blame the Assembly. The Assembly has not lifted its game, and that is why we have such difficulties. Because the bylaws regulating some of these things are there. Why are you not enforcing them? That amounts to what? Weak capacity of the state. The regulatory capacity of the state is that the state is given the power to make laws and enforce them. If we are not able to do them, then I'm afraid. Why are you there? So the Assembly, if they want to maintain cleanliness in the city, they must also ensure that these things get fixed.
And tied to that, the other story I want to bring up, Accra needs structural plan. That's according to a spatial planner. And that's on page 16 of today's Daily Graphic newspaper. Now, here's where it gets interesting. So, according to the acting chief executive officer of the Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority, LASPA, Kwejo Yeboah, the management of developments in Accra would be difficult in the next 2 to 3 decades if efforts are not made to institute an effective land use and spatial plan to guide its physical growth and development. Now, you wouldn't realize, Doc, I mean, I'm sure you're fully aware, we inherited a certain planning regime from the colonial forces, the imperialist forces. And then there were pretty tight plans for Accra. Later, Nkrumah went on with the development of Tema, what it was meant to be. And then we seem to have lost the plot. It was anything goes, and now we have buildings sited on waterways and all kinds of things. We always complain, but it comes back to zero. I'm bringing this up because recently we shared something, hanging homes. And you go to the Kaswa-Weija stretch, and some of the hills there have developments. How those developments started, only God knows. But now there has been erosion to the point that, and that place is right on a fault line when it comes to earthquakes. Should the possibility of an earthquake or the possibility of a landslide or mudslide happening is really high. And if you look at the number of buildings there, you can tell what catastrophe would happen. It would block the road and chaos. What do you make of all of this? It appears every time we need a knee-jerk reaction.
I am always surprised that sometimes we have some of these things, buildings springing up. I ask myself whether we have planners in this country. Yes, but if we have such office here, why are we having difficulty in managing these things? I think that such officers must up their game so that we get these basics right. It is important. You don't need anybody to tell us that the state or the city must be planned. It is for our own benefit. If you look at even land, which is a very important factor of production, and we need it for all these structures, the use of it, I'm sure we are not putting it into effective use. Why are we using? Look at the space that we have. It can accommodate a lot of buildings, and we struggle to spread our buildings on the surface of lands, large tract of lands. Meanwhile, the airspace is there. Why are we not building into airspace and all that? It's simply, is it the case that we have so much in terms of land that we don't know the use? That's why we are wasting it. I think the proper planning must come in. And some of these things go a long way to undermine the beauty of the city. And then it also affects a whole lot of things, such as agricultural production and all that. I think the time is now for us to act very fast. If you tie this thing to issue of, cleanliness and then sanitation and all that, one of the reasons why the capital of Ghana was moved from Cape Coast to Accra was to make sure that, look, they realized that Accra was one of the cleanest places that you can find. So they moved it here. In addition to that, it was close to Ekwapum, which is very healthy. Now, look at mismanagement and then lack of planning and all the rest to it. We have all the difficulties that we are having today. We need to go to the drawing board and get the basics right.
We need to go to the drawing board and get the basics right. My final story from the Daily Graphic, Doc. Europe turns to Nigeria to fill gap in gas supply. I found this interesting. One man's meat, they say, is another man's poison. Now, as Russia is going to lose, and the EU nations already had a plan pre the Ukrainian assault. They had a plan to lower their gas consumption from Russia. In fact, now it's been accelerated. So they're going to get about wean themselves of about two-thirds of the gas supply from Russia, which means that Russia is not necessarily going to get what it would have got from Europe. And if it has to export gas to other countries, it would be even more difficult with Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, which hasn't even come into force. But in this instance, according to the EU ambassador to Nigeria, Samuela Isopi, together with France, Italy, Portugal, and Spain's ambassador, they have met with the management of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company. And the EU is courting its first African liquefied natural gas supplier and hoping that these ties would result in gas flow. And Nigeria is one of the big boys, though. I think the fourth largest supplier when it comes to gas to Europe. This, everybody has said, is going to be a boon. But I guess all of us are cautious because I'm sure you know very well, Doc, when Nigeria discovered oil, I think somewhere in the 60s or 70s, everybody felt this would transform them. And then we saw what happened in the Niger Delta and all of that. How do you think Nigeria can capitalize on this geopolitical situation?
Kwame Nkrumah has put it right, and I always refer to it. Organization decides everything. Nigeria should be able to organize themselves very well and place itself in the right position to take advantage of this. This is a golden opportunity that they can't afford to miss it. They get it and build the economies so that other states will emulate such example. Of course, Ghana must also prepare itself if you have the capacity. Why not? So that one day, who knows, that somebody will knock out our door, and then we can also provide that service and then better our economies. All that we need is that we should have a better preparation and get ourselves ready for any advantage that will come from such exercise.
Of course, Nigeria and Algeria are the biggest African liquefied natural gas suppliers to the old continent. But let's get into the Ghanaian Times newspaper now. Banner headline, carnage on roads. MTTD gets tough on highways as NSRA, I think that should be NRSA, National Road Safety Authority, launches Easter Stay Alive campaign. And when another celebratory season, our Muslim brothers and sisters are in the Ramadan and they'll soon get into the Eid, and we're already approaching Easter. Do you see any improvement? I mean, the figures, Doc, when it comes to the carnage on our roads, it's just about 4%, a little over 4%, different from what we saw in 2021. So nothing much to celebrate. But for me, I have seen quite a presence of MTTD officers here and there. They're getting more and more serious. Are you feeling the impact?
Certainly no. Why no? Because, you see, apart from being on the road to ensure that people comply with the road regulations, what is happening, what are we doing with regard to what? Faulty traffic lights. That is a source of what? Accident. They are all over. Take Accra, all over. I have said time and again, Holy Spirit Cathedral, when you are driving towards from the Electoral Commission, driving towards Accra Workers College, you have to use your own initiative and then drive through because there is no traffic. The light doesn't show. There are broken ones all over. Are they fixing it? And you can say that, yes, you'll be on the road, but traffic lights, you are not ready to work on it. For me, that will not amount to effective monitoring of the process. There are some roads that even there are no traffic lights at all, and accidents occur every day. What are they doing with regard to that? We have turned blind eye to these things, and yet we want to deceive ourselves into believing that we are fighting this, menace on our road. I'm sure we are not ready to fight it. Let's put it bluntly. If you want to get it done, we know how to do it.
Two quick stories from the Ghanaian Times, and it's a wrap. First, on page 15, revive Achimota school sandals policy to empower Kumasi shoe factory. And Nkrumah started a shoe factory. Of course, we know where that ended. But the board chairman of the Defense Industries Holding Company Limited, DIHOC Footwear Division, Dr. Carlaye, has appealed to the government to revive the policy of Achimota school sandals, which was initiated in 2014 as part of efforts to empower the Kumasi shoe factory to supply sandals to all schools. I'll pause right there, but maybe just to add, with approximately 100,000 state security personnel in the country, demand for more products, employee numbers will shoot from 200 to 800 within 5 years, he said. Doc, contemplate our security services, for example, the police, immigration, the armed forces, and all of that, the Navy, and you look at other state agencies, even when it comes to construction and all of that. Imagine if we had a hub, or at least a network, of shoe-producing entities which were supplying them rather than importing everything from China, for example. I mean, how do you think that would impact our economy? And what do you think about this call which seeks to revive the shoe production capacity of our country?
Brother, nobody should tell us that this is the way to go. The things that Nkrumah put in place, we have abandoned it and we are struggling here. In fact, for me, I see that Nkrumah lived way beyond his contemporaries. Because some of these things, he was able to figure it out, think that, look, the next 2 generations, they will need this thing. Let's quickly double our effort. We have abandoned this program, and now here we are. Imagine we are continuing. Look at the number of shoe factories that we are going to have. Our military, our police, and all that. We will not go to Czech Republic to buy shoes and get boots and all that. Look at, I traveled to Czech Republic. They had a company called Bacha, which produces a lot of shoes for their country, and Ghana.
Did you say the Czech Republic?
Yes, Czech Republic. That company belongs to the Czech. Bacha.
Bata, right? It's Bata, yes. Right? Yeah.
They pronounce it as Bacha, right? It's a factory that has lived many years. Why can't we maintain some of these things so that we can even prop up factories such as those who have in Kumasi and all that? I have a friend who does shoes in Accra here. I tell you, if you see the quality of shoe, you'll be amazed. There are some of such examples all over. We have not taken advantage of, and yet we import with hard currency and come and disturb our economy. Can't we begin to learn lessons from this and develop our own so that at the end of the day, we'll get a better market? As a little boy growing up, I saw Chinese sandals. All right. It was not the best, but they improved it from time to time, and it became the best. Now look at the products that are churned out from China. Amazing. We can also start and get there.
We can start from somewhere, definitely. And you know what amazes me? Even this story cites 1960, the period between 1960 and 1961, when Ghana actually signed an agreement with Czechoslovakia back then, not the Czech Republic, when it comes to exactly this point, shoe production. So you imagine 1961, we're in 2022. About 61 years on. You see why sometimes some people get frustrated with our country, because it appears we never learn, and we just like to
we always go to sleep.
A lot of talk.
And then we come back and blame the system. We know how to fix it. Let's get it right.
Right. Let's get to the story. I want your quick take on it. It's on page 12 of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Hung Parliament will erode winner-takes-all system. And I'm sure you've heard. The chairman of the governing board of Afrobarometer, Professor Emmanuel Jimabwedi, has intimated that for the country to erode the winner-takes-all system of governance, zero-sum game, he wishes the country continues to have hung parliaments. He explained that with the hung parliament, both the majority and minority would learn the habit of consensus building and cross-party consultation to strengthen democratic politics. Just to quote a bit of what he says, I pray for more hung parliaments. I think that this is exactly what Ghana and the citizenry wants, so as to deepen democratic politics needed, and that is the kind of cure that we need for winner takes all. Is that a cure? A hung parliament?
Well, certainly. I have said it also, and the professor has also added his voice to some of these. I've said it time and again that looking at the type of parliament that we have, where you have majority who always have their way, and they will not take into consideration the views of minority. Let us look at democracy from the perspective that, look, you are talking about majority rule and minority interest. Your ability to balance the two makes it better. So people get their high numbers and then they walk over the minority and all that. We need more, and I support the call by the professor that we need more, so that yes, we'll be able to sit down and talk, build consensus, and decide things that is in the interest of the state, than not going along party lines, which sometimes some of their needs are not necessarily the interest of the people. We need such parliament, so that at the end of the day, what is so important is what we will put our energies to, than wasting our time on party things, which tend to satisfy only few people and leaving everybody in difficult situation. I support hung parliament. It should be something that we get it all the time. Ghanaians want it. That is why they have voted that way. And I'm sure that we are going to get such occurrences as we go along, because we are getting skirt and blouse voting. That's another phenomenon that is also increasing with amazing rapidity. I hope and pray that we can get, whilst we get hung parliament, we get skirt and blouse, so that at the end of the day, whoever is not performing, any non-performing MP will be thrown out, and those who can do the work will come in and then help us. That's all.
Right. The Daily Guide newspaper now, Professor Duncan announces $2 million for world peace. That's a story that we brought you yesterday. Nana pledges more support for education, and tied to that, government awards scholarships to 47,160 students. There's also Rebecca calls for urgent action against NCDs. And this story that I want to get into, masked men attack NUST students, or KNUST students. Now, some students of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology have been robbed in their hostel rooms at Ayeduase New Site in Kumasi by 3 masked men. What happened? The students were fast asleep in their rooms when the gun-wielding robbers forced the doors open and took away 3 laptop computers, a tablet, and 4 mobile phones. One of the students was said to have been injured in the incident, which occurred on April 7, 2022 at about 2:30 a.m., having been hit by a pellet at his occiput. The police said. These robberies on campuses, I know being back in the day in the University of Ghana, it was also, from time to time, especially in the hostels and sometimes in the main halls. How do you think, especially as you are in the system, what more can be done to prevent them?
What we need to support the security people to be able to deal with these things. Let us admit that in spite of the difficulties that the security have in terms of resources, the little that they have, they've been able to stand up and defend us all the time. Sometimes some of these issues come up and then, it creates problems. But I know that with the right approach, they will be able to handle this in no time. Sometimes too, a caution must be served onto the students who bring, all manner of people to campus, that people who are not supposed to be there, you encourage them, they come, and then they create all manner of problems for authorities in the school. For the authorities in the school, I know that they are always alert, making sure that the right, things are put in place to safeguard the lives of people on campus. But sometimes the problem is students. They bring people that the school do not welcome them. You don't know the identities and all that. And the time you realize, they create problems for us. I believe that I trust our security. They will be able to deal with this and then help us to put in proper measures that will stand the test of time.
Right. You have some fans on social media, Doc. So some people who are watching us are very excited by your contributions. One of them is your former student. He says, Pius Beidou, fantastic contributions from my former political science lecturer, Dr. Kwame Asasanti. And he says it reminds him of his political science days. So you have a former student who is lauding you on our Facebook live stream. Let's look at the Daily Dispatch newspaper. Kennedy Japan joins race for MPP's 2024 slot. MPP will reward committed party members. Ameyawe Kumfi says so. And Kandapar did not say judges should rule on party lines. That's according to Colonel retired Bevelo Lati. Let's start with the Canadian Japan joins race for MPP's 2024 slot. Pictured there, Canadian Japan, Jogate, Alan Tremanting, and Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, the Vice President. I heard the Finance Minister in recent times talk about the fact that Dr. Bawumia, through, especially on the back of his recent lecture in Kasua, has dignified himself, clothed himself with what is needed to take over as president. We also know that the same party has said that people shouldn't, especially bigwigs in the party, shouldn't say such things that seem to show leanings towards supporting this or that person. How do you feel about that entire development? And how do you also feel about Kennedy Japan joining the fray?
Let's start with Kennedy Japan. Are we sure that he has said that he wants to join the race? We need to be clear about this. If he has said that, fine, then we can go ahead and then, try to look at the issue and discuss them. But if that is the case, there's nothing wrong. He has served the party. He has a lot of following, and he's a committed member of the MPP. So such a person, if you want to stand, you realize that he has a lot of large following who follow him and then help him to win the election. But there's one thing, joining and then contesting, and another thing, winning. So let's see how it pans out, and it will be an interesting contest that I would love to see. The issue of, the party themselves, party leadership of the MPP coming out to set rules that regulate conduct of people with regard to how they can approach elections and all that. And they themselves coming out, of course, not all of them, some of them coming out to undermine the very institutions that they set for themselves. For me, that is a worrying situation, because this is the time for everybody to help within the party, to help the party to build to be able to develop the country. Elections is nothing but contest of ideas and then the referendum of your work. What work are you going to stand on to campaign if you don't support the government to deliver? All right. Look at the number of campaign promises this government gave. This is a time to help the government to honor all those promises, because 2024 accountability time is that,
right.
And people will call the government to question that you promised this, have you delivered? So I believe that the time we find ourselves in within the party, those members of the party, is to be able to help deliver the public good, and that will help them to break the heat than unnecessarily jostling for position and all that. They need to work. They need to work.
In the next few minutes, Doc, I want us to just dilate on a few more issues, relevant ones, and there are quite a number of them, but I'll try to squeeze them in. Kandapar did not say judges should rule on party lines. That's according to Bevelo Lati. If you look at Republic Press today, Kandapar under fire for bizarre admonishment to judges. Both stories tied. I'm sure you've heard him. He said in recent times that the judiciary should, be balanced so that it doesn't appear you're always ruling in favor of the governing administration. But some have taken him on, the likes of Aikwe Otu, a party bigwig. Your very quick take on that.
I listened with rapt attention. And what he said is if, a conditional, all right, that if this thing happened, this is what will happen, all right. So for me, looking at where the minister sits, the kind of information that comes to his desk, if he's giving us a caution, why are we attacking him? It is important for such a big person within government to come and speak to such issues so that we can follow through. For me, for the judges, I'm not sure anybody can convince them to, decide along certain lines. No, they know their work and they will always deliver. I believe that is why we call them all justices. They will be fair to the issues that are before them. So for me, it's no problem, and that I am happy that you have such a huge personality within government, such as the security minister, telling us that, look, let us be careful, and that if we have this condition, it will lead to this. For me, it is an early warning signal that we should take that advice in our stride and build on so that we have a solid democratic system.
Right. The Ghanaian Publisher newspaper, government settles 100 million Ghana cedi NHIS debt, and Bevlo Lati defends Kandapa. Also, minister worried about indiscipline on our roads. And there is this one. The final newspaper, Kumasi Shoe Factory opens first showroom in Accra, almost in response to the discussion we were having. Demo to hit Gimpa over 1,000 Ghana cedi annual car parking fee imposed on students. Then there's government pays 100 million arrears owed NHIS. I just mentioned that. But interesting, tied to what you were saying about reckless driving and the authorities not doing enough, 1,299 drivers without license arrested in 2021, an increase of 111% over 2022. So you see, Doc, it goes back to some of the very things you were talking about. And the Daily Statesman Agenda 111 Hospital project kicks off at Yagaba. I want to wrap with two issues, just if you can take a quick stab at them for me. One, Oliver Barker-Vomao, convener of Fix the Country, says he was tortured while in police custody. That is one. I want you to address that. He says he'll be giving details, hopefully, of that. And there's also the current youth unemployment rate, which has hopped from the figure of around 2017 to 2020 was around 9%. Now it's around 18.9%, 19.8%, I should say. It's a jump of about 118%. Your quick reactions to these two, torture and unemployment, very quickly.
First, torture. I think Vomaho has said that he will go to hold a press conference for us to have all the details. I think we have to wait patiently, because for now, it's a level of accusation. We want the details, and then we want to also see the response of the police so that we can interrogate the issues properly. So for me, I want to hold on and then get the two parties to come out so that we can make sense of what is happening. Right. The second issue about the
unemployment.
This was the second issue.
Unemployment,
yes.
Has risen by.
We always pay lip service to this problem. That if you see various manifestos, the MPP, NDC, they promise us heaven and earth that would deal with unemployment and all that. Let us be fair to them. That when they come to office, you see semblance of that being done, providing certain jobs and all that, people getting. But see, we need to double our effort, because the rate at which we churn out students from universities, technical universities and whatnot, we need to factor that into the way we create jobs. Otherwise, we are going to have a large army of the youth marauding through our streets without having jobs. And that is a difficulty that we don't need to have, given the circumstances we find ourselves.
Thank you so much, Doc. That's an issue that we'll have on the chopping block when we dig into our big stories today. But thank you so much for your company this Wednesday morning. God bless you, sir.
I'm grateful.
Right. We'll be heading into sports up next, but a very happy birthday to Anastasia Edu. You're a wonderful person. Today's your birthday. God richly bless you and grant you the best in life. Up next, sports. Stay. Well, time now for us to get into our big stories, and we're delving into three major issues. Of course, we might add a few others. We're going to be looking at the allegation, if you like, by Oliver Barker-Vormawor that he was tortured while in police custody. We've heard from him, but the salient details of what exactly transpired, because we've heard others in the system also say that you don't expect any special treatment, or that what was meted out to him, while it may not be in the very best of situations, is nothing different from what is, what pertains to other people who are held in police custody. We'll also look at the rate of unemployment, especially among the youth, aging 15 to 35 years. Over the last 3-year belt, 2017 to 2020, we've had an average of 9% per the statistics from here that we've been given. That has risen sharply to 19.7%, an increment of about 118% when you make the comparative. We're going to be exploring that situation as well, and also take a look at the utility companies, both the Ghana Water Company Limited and the Electricity Company of Ghana, calling for more when it comes to service charges or tariffs. What will happen in these harsh economic times? We'll bring you details of that. We'll be engaging shortly Deputy Attorney General Alfred Tuah-Yeboah, as and when he's available to join the conversation. We'll start talking about the Oliver Barker-Vormawor situation. But in the studio, let me welcome a board member of Parliament for Tamale Central, Murtala Muhammad. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You always start, like this is a bit, and then you walk up and start punching. Start giving us, jobs here and there. But
I'm
right
fastened, so
before we connect with Tuah-Yeboah, the Deputy Attorney General, I want your quick take because we'll come back to it as well. This whole bit about torture, the allegation by Oliver Barker-Vormawor. Have you listened to him?
Yes, I listened to him on Joy yesterday. I think your 5:30 news,
right.
And I think it extended to 6 p.m. news, and I was shocked.
You were shocked?
I was shocked if what he said is true. We are in a democracy, and we expect some level of professionalism by security agencies, more so the police.
Right.
If someone, commits a crime or allegedly commits a crime, there is nothing wrong with the law dealing with the person. But the laws of the state also spells out how such a person should be dealt with.
Right.
The person is not guilty until he or she is proven guilty.
In this instance, we're talking about a charge of treason felony. That's the highest.
It's a charge that can only be established by a court of competent jurisdiction. Even a murder, you charge someone for murder, the evidences you have will prove whether the person indeed engaged in the murder or not. So it doesn't matter what the charge is. Even if a person is pronounced guilty, assuming that the gentleman was pronounced guilty and he was under police custody, it is criminal for you to engage in the kinds of acts he alleged that the police or the security agencies engage in.
What specifically got you this concern? Because if it's the bit about the number of inmates in there, he talks about that where he was not fit for humans and all of that. But these are the same conditions we have in other prison cells across the country. If it has to do with feeding, at a point he was on a hunger strike and all of that. I mean, where lies that bit about torture, so to speak?
We are making these discussions on the basis of the fact that everything he said indeed happened. So if those things happened, I don't think that any other inmate, including himself, deserves that. So he perhaps will be talking for all those who have gone through what he has gone through. He has the platform. He has the opportunity to make these points very clear. For all you know, several people have been going under such inhuman treatment in the hands of the security services, but because they do not have the platform as he has, and that is why he is making this point, and everybody is giving it some attention. So I think that we need to be looking at the allegation and establishing the fact that that allegation is true or not. If it is true, we all need to collectively do something about it. I was particularly disappointed when I listened to the Deputy Minister for the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, outrightly saying that it's not true because perhaps the information he got from the security services without a scintilla of investigation. I expect government officials.
There are those who have said that. I mean, I've heard, I don't know whether it was Professor Jimobodi. I may be wrong, so do not quote me on this one. But I've heard people, academics and others say, the Facebook posts and all of that, they were not enough for you to have gone hard with the full force of the state like we did. But the other side of the coin is you can never tell. Someone may supposedly start like this, and you think, oh, it's just one of those things, and then boom, it's in your face. So, two sides to the coin.
I think what is significant is the kind of information they had. If their information is certainly based on the Facebook, for me, I tell you, then it speaks huge levels of unprofessionalism from our security services. Someone who intends to do coup would know very well, having posted this on his Facebook, traveled from wherever he was, and then came to Ghana. It simply doesn't make sense. And this is not someone who is unintelligent. He's a very sharp guy. He's a student, I'm told, at Cambridge. Is that not the case?
That is.
A PhD student,
right,
who certainly would have known the consequences, assuming he knew that he was going to stage a coup. So I think that for me it was just, if you want to go by the kind of comments that people have made in this country, comments that could have plunged this nation into chaos and anarchy, nothing happens to those people. And I think that I agree with the professor and others who think that a Facebook post should not. You see, the police and the security services should not just be reacting to anything that anybody posts on Facebook. If they were to do that, I believe that every day would have citizens of this country.
But it's not about the tone of what he says. It's not about, on the back of this, I'm just paraphrasing, it's been a while, on the back of this e-levy cake and all of that, I mean, I would start a coup myself, stuff like that, and the useless armed forces and all of that, and he goes on with a few things. Even those who are representing him have said that his words were in poor taste, but though they are not tantamount to treason, felony, and the charge that he had been hit.
Maybe he would explain further what he means by staging a coup. Someone can say, I want to stage a coup, but not necessarily in the literal meaning of coup as in toppling a democratically elected government. I don't think that we need such, and I agree with those who think that if he meant what he said or wrote on his Facebook, of course we need to discuss, but I really don't think that he meant a coup. Then the reason why I'm making this statement is that he's a very smart guy, having made this statement and knowing very well that it became a subject for discussion in this country. He would just get up from the United Kingdom, travel to Ghana, knowing very well that the security agencies were well aware of the post he had on his Facebook. If he meant
in fact, from what I gather, he was aware that there were moves to arrest him at the airport, but he still came. Exactly.
So he came. I really don't think that he really meant coup. Look at the kitchen knife coup too. This government seems to be rushing and running for everything. We are not saying that when there is real intention by citizens to engage in coup, they should not be arrested. But you don't need anybody to tell you that that certainly was not the real intention of this gentleman. And for me, that is another discussion we can have. I think the focus should be on the treatment he alleged he was given by the security agencies. And let us not just look at him as a person. Because I've heard others who are saying that he shouldn't think that he will be treated differently from others. Those others they treat that same way, is it acceptable? Absolutely no. It is not acceptable to treat citizens that way, particularly when they are not convicted for committing any crime. When they are allegedly, or when they allegedly commit a crime, pending a proper institution to establish whether they committed the crime or otherwise. And I think that we need to look at them in that perspective. Your station, you have had several reportages about people who felt that they were treated, unfairly, in some circumstances that is unacceptable by law in this country, by law enforcing agencies. And I think that we need to condemn such act. My disappointments in the deputy minister was when he condemned and said it's not true because the security agencies perhaps told him that it wasn't true. I think that as a minister or a deputy minister of state, to a ministry such as Minister of Justice and Attorney General, and as a lawyer too of several years of practice, I thought that sometimes our comments should be measured until investigation is conducted to establish or otherwise. If you come out and say that it never happened and institute an investigation, and the investigation says that indeed it happened, the gentleman was treated in the, the manner he claimed he was treated, what then will you do as a minister? You need sometimes to be very careful. I remember when we were at the Ministry of Information, myself and Felix as deputy ministers, and we're doing this daily briefing. It was Honorable Ayaraga who was supposed to do it, and I suggested that no, allow us to do it so that when we make mistakes, you can come and correct. But if you, the minister, you do it and make mistakes, you will not be able to correct. I was concerned about the kind of statement you will make as a minister of state, in this case, a deputy minister. I think that he could have allowed that statement to be made by party boys and not he as a deputy minister for Justice and Attorney General.
Well, we hope to get more details of that when it comes to, this entire development when it comes to allegations of torture and all of that. In the meantime, like we see in Republic Press today, he's been saying, and in his interaction, he speaks about the fact that he is better, he is stronger. There was the attempt weeks back to make a donation to the Ashaiman police station. Of course, there are processes to follow that he didn't. But let's quickly look at some other dimensions. Let me go over Zoom and have an interaction with Alfred Tuayabua, Deputy Attorney General, right here in Ghana. Senior, thank you so much for joining the conversation.
Good morning, my brother.
It's a pleasure having you. I'd just like to find out, you've heard of the allegations of torture by Oliver Mause Baka Vomawo. He talks about the room where he was kept. He talks about interactions with the police. He talks about, of course, the circumstances in there. The place was crawling with all sorts of vermin, mice, cockroaches, and everything, and the rest. What is your quick take on his allegation of torture?
Thank you very much. I've listened to him, and he's talking about torture. And my concern has to do with his concentration on torture. Because if we take our constitution, there are provisions on torture. Ghana is also a state party to an international convention on torture. Torture, as we all know, is an intentional infliction of harm or something untoward towards a person with the intention that that person will come forth to some form of proof. From what I've heard from Oliver, he has not given any details as to how he was intentionally malhandled or mishandled or maltreated with the intention that he may come out with some form of proof. What I've heard him say is respect to how the conditions in our cells are. And if you have conditions in our cells, could it be said that you were singled out for that treatment? I'm not endorsing a situation where we have bad conditions in our cells or prisons. There is a need to improve on our conditions. But when you come out to say that you were tortured, I expect that you give the particulars and details of the torture.
Which we've been told eventually will get some more scope on. But I know that per our law, and I know you quote the aspect of our 1992 Constitution which borders on this, tied to what the United Nations says, and I just want us to situate it. For the purposes of this convention, and I'm reading what the UN document says, the term torture means any act by which severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, is intentionally inflicted on a person for such purposes as obtaining from him or a third person information or a confession, punishing him for an act he or a third person has committed. So if we go beyond the physical dimensions, we may not have heard him say that he was physically assaulted or anything of the sort, but mentally, emotionally, is it possible that he could have been tortured?
Torture, as really stated, entails both physical and mental. if he's talking about mental torture, he should tell us the intentional conduct on the part of state actors to subject him to such a mental torture. For instance, if he was kept in a room, an isolated room, infested with mice, mosquitoes, and all those I've spoken about, then they say, oh, I was singled out for this kind of treatment. Then he may be talking about having been made to undergo through this kind of tortious act on the part of the police. But so far as I'm concerned, and what I've listened to him say, I cannot endorse or confirm his act of torture until he comes out with the particulars of the torture. Thereafter, we can interrogate it.
But you do agree with me that when it comes to mental torture, it would be pretty difficult for him to substantiate it. You agree, right? Because this is not physical. It's not like a marking you can see on your body. It's not pain that we can quantify or determine. So maybe I want you to look at it from the angle of what would be the requirement, the high requirements in such an instance to prove mental torture. What does our law say?
Yes, you can have instance of mental torture where there's an intentional conduct on the part of state actors to subject you a certain form of activity which affects you mentally. For instance, do interrogation. You are placed in a room for 24 hours, nobody is speaking to you. Certainly, it will have some impact on your mindset. Or you are placed in a room where there's loud noise, loud sound for about some minutes or some hours. Certainly, it will have some form of effect on your thinking. Or you are told to remain in a room where there's total darkness, very dark, nothing else, you don't see anything. You are there and it's like you are in hell. So there's a possibility of you proving with evidence that whatever you went through amounted to a mental torture. But if you are in a cell with other inmates, you go about what you're supposed to do. You sleep, for example, even on the bare floor. The room that you are in with other inmates is infested with cockroaches, mosquitoes, etc., etc. That may amount to some form of treatment that you think you deserve not to have been taken through. But that will not amount to mental torture from my point of view.
Right.
As I said, let's wait for him to come out with his details or particulars of torture.
Right. When you look at the conditions in our police cells generally across the country, don't you think, I mean, when you consider the fact that sometimes so many people are crammed, I think he mentions that 13 people were crammed in a cell meant for 4 people. He talks about the vermin in there. He talks about the poor quality of food, for which reason he tried to make what has been termed an illegal donation to the Ashaiman police station. Do those not border on torture? Not anybody assaulting you, but intentional emotional torture?
I think it may amount to inhuman treatment.
Inhuman treatment?
Inhuman or degrading treatment. I'm not here to say that all is well with ourselves and with our prisons. We need to do a whole lot of things to reform the conditions in our prisons and our cells. Take it, if you are kept in custody and in this weather where it's very warm and there's no fan and there's no window, even the window, even if it's closed, definitely you go to some form of treatment that you may not want to. But the fact that you've undergone that treatment should not be taken to mean that you were singled out for that. We need to look at the situation. I agree with Oliver. If he went through such a situation where total, as I said, a room infected with mosquitoes and other things, then perhaps we should also join the campaign to have the reform in ourselves, in our prisons. And on this note, let me commend institutions like the Church of Pentecost that has taken it upon itself to build a prison. At least we expect such things to be happening due to constraints when it comes to financial resources. And you may have the conditions in the prisons and the cells that nobody likes, but we need to improve upon it.
Right. Let me just find out from you. Now, he had cause at a point to even embark on a hunger strike because of how he claimed he was being treated. And let's also look at when the bail conditions were, set and all of that, and he was meant to be released. It took an extra day. In fact, officials who should have been a part of the process all of a sudden supposedly couldn't be found. He went through more, just expecting, just when you feel you're going to be let go of, at least granted bail, then you're kept back in prison, in police cells and all of that. When you look at this thread, would that on any level constitute torture?
Unfortunately, no. Every legal practitioner has gone through this process before. I'm not saying that that's the best process, where you have a client having been admitted to bail with justification. And before your client is released, the investigator will require that, one, he takes a look at where the surety lives. Two, if it will justify landed property, the property must be inspected. Three, that property must be valued to ensure that the amount on it tallies with what the court is expecting the surety to post. Then four, in some instances, the police will have to go to the Lands Commission to conduct a search, especially when you have documents on the land at Lands Commission, to see whether indeed the person who claims to be the owner of that property is actually the owner. So lawyers day in, day out go through such processes. Before becoming the deputy AG, I went through similar process with my clients. But that's the process. We can perhaps fast track it. But what he went through is not something new. We may want to reform that one. Is there a state where you can have a document where you press of a button, you can get everything? Let's look at that. In terms of his hunger strike, it is right to go on a hunger strike. Nobody can fault him for that. It will be an issue only when someone tells him that we will not allow you to eat. But respect to his right to go on hunger strike, I think nobody can fault him for that.
The law, whether you're talking about the UN conventions or statutes or our own 1992 Constitution, speaks about intention, how it must be intentional, infliction of these. So if, for example, just for the sake of education, if it could be proven, and I'm just saying this hypothetically, not alleging anything, that whichever officers should have granted him bail or who should have done certain things in the process intentionally, made themselves unavailable so as to keep him in custody. Would that constitute torture in any way? Now that there's the intention, I just want that for clarity.
To me, if after he was granted bail, the officers in charge decided to go through a due process, and from his point of view, that due process was not the right thing to be done, he can bring it up. But that will not amount to torture.
So as far as I hear it from you, all that Oliver has said up to this point, unless he adds up to the information he's given us, from what we can glean, his accusation or allegation of torture has no standing, no grounding in our law.
As at now, from what he has given, there is no basis to conclude that he was tortured.
All right, maybe my final bit to you, I'll just have Honorable Murtala come in briefly, and then that is if he has any questions for you, and then we can wrap it. But my final bit to you. So Oliver, on the back of, he is alleged to have had some meetings with some big wigs in the current administration, and then he decided to do the Facebook Live thing. He was cautioned against certain things, but he decided to go ahead by his lawyers, but he went ahead with that bit. Do you feel that by speaking this much or putting out details of some of what happened, he is unnecessarily antagonizing, the powers that be, and maybe complicating his own situation, looking at the charge of treason felony that hangs over his head?
I think his lawyers should be the best persons to answer this question. He's represented by lawyers. He's also a lawyer. And he knows what he's supposed to do. He knows what he's supposed to say. But from our side, in terms of prosecuting in court, this statement that he's made has nothing, in fact, the statements have nothing to do with what he's doing in court. It's without prejudice. He's stating a point. When we go to court, we deal with evidence.
Right.
And this is a post facto matter. So this one, from our point of view, is not going to change anything.
But if you were his counsel, what advice would you have given him?
Oh, well, perhaps if he offers my legal fee, I will advise him. Now that I don't take legal fees, I'm able to advise.
Right. Okay. So, Sidia, just hold for us for maybe some 2 minutes. I want some quick reactions from Murtala, the Member of Parliament for Tamale Central. He's in the studio. Maybe just a quick reaction, and we can take it from there.
Well, first and foremost, you don't expect him to tell you that it was a torture, because yesterday he made it very clear that the gentleman didn't have any basis for the claim of torture. When you ask him, he went to talk about the fact that there is a UN convention which we are signatory to and our laws. And in defining what constitutes torture, he interestingly avoided the mental torture. He interestingly avoided the mental torture until when you read to him what the UN says, then he then says that no, Oliver didn't provide any evidence. What other evidence does he need to be provided to establish that there was a torture? Two,
but the accusation of torture is not one that you can take for granted. So you would need a very sound basis to determine.
Then who establishes it? Is it the person who feels it, or the Deputy Minister for Justice and Attorney General? So that is one. He initially said, when he defined it. You didn't even ask him to define what constitutes the torture. He avoided the mental aspects of the torture. Two, he also said that if it is established that he was not singled out for that treatment, he alleged that it cannot constitute a torture. You remember he made that statement too. It doesn't matter whether he was singled out or not. The point is that if he was put in a room with others, which was either cockroaches or mosquitoes infested, and he felt being tortured mentally, that can only be established through some processes. Now, for him to just say that he doesn't think that the gentleman was tortured, I didn't expect him to say anything different from what he said yesterday. Another very important point, he said that it can be, he sees it as inhuman treatment. What is the difference between inhuman treatment to a torture? Based on how the person feels. You can treat me inhumanly, and I won't feel tortured, but someone can feel tortured. It has to do with the mental state and the feeling of the person. And for the avoidance of doubt, the gentleman feels he was tortured. We don't know the trauma he went through as a result of the conditions that he was subjected to. So that would have to be established by processes. Okay. So for the Deputy Minister to say, I don't think that he was tortured, I didn't expect him to say anything different from what he said yesterday.
All right. So I'll have you, Alfred Tuya, give your quick reaction. And when Honorable Murtala was talking, it also brought to mind, I mean, in law, necessaries. What may constitute necessaries for someone? Maybe luxury for another person, and not necessary. So I think that may be what he's drawing, some lines through that. For him, this may have constituted torture. Maybe a quick reaction, and then we shall cap it off on that.
All right, thank you very much. Honorable Murtala said, listen to me yesterday on your network. If he actually did, he realized that in my definition yesterday, I added the mental side.
No, you said he wasn't tortured. That's what you said. You
this
said
morning,
it wasn't true he was tortured.
I gave a definition, and
without
my memory serves me right. I ended up whether physical or mental. So that one is something that is beside the point. Number two, the use of torture is different from inhuman treatment. Honorable, if you take the long title of that convention, I think the host has that long title. You have torture, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. So if you want to situate your matter on torture, please let us know that. Number two, if you take our Constitution, Article 15, Clause 2, there's a fine distinction there made 2A and 2B. The 2A is about torture, and the 2B is about inhuman or degrading treatment. So you can't mix up the two.
So it is the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment. All of that is in
that is it. Right. That is it. That is it. Then if you look at, he's saying that the Deputy Minister, I'm defending. I don't know whether the Honourable Minister wanted me to come and say, oh, what the gentleman is saying is the truth. I know that the Honourable Member has been to the women of law. At least, yeah, he has LLB. He knows the burden of proof. Who is to discharge that burden? Is it my duty as a deputy minister of state to say what the gentleman is saying is the truth? No. From the information that we have gathered, and sitting from where I'm sitting, there isn't any scintilla of evidence pointing out torture. But if he comes up with further details, we can interrogate it. Yesterday I said it, that Ghana is a democratic state. We must all do things to ensure that our democratic journey thrives. And for that matter, if there is evidence of abuse of human rights, we must come out, speak about it, interrogate it, and if need be, punish people who engage in any form of human rights abuse or the other way around. But however, if you go to the media space and you mention, you cry out torture, and then without adding anything, and you expect that you should just accept it, hook, line, and sinker, I beg to differ. It cannot be done that way. Oliver, as I said, is a lawyer. He's represented by lawyers.
Right.
At the time that he was in custody, if indeed he was undergoing through any form of torture, I think that a person like Honorable Lawyer Tutu Ampo or just Shrem, they are not mean lawyers that will say, if their clients tell them that they were tortured, they will keep quiet and not voice it out. They definitely voice it out in court. The gentleman we had in court, he was asked, are you being treated well? My brother, even if you go back and then you'll be able to say situation where Oliver had said that the police treated him well. I remember in one of the networks, I don't have it now, but if he underwent through this kind of where he slept, cockroaches, that one, if it's actually true, like I said, we need to look at how do we reform the prisons, how do we reform the cells. But that will not amount to torture from my point of view. We need to reform it.
Right. So just to buttress your point, his case has no legs to stand on for now. Right.
As we have it now, based on what he has provided, there's no substance to his allegations.
Can I make this point?
Very quickly.
Honorable Deputy Minister, yesterday, regardless the definitions you gave, you made a conclusive statement that it was not true he was tortured. This morning, you are telling the viewing public that based on the information you have gathered, the gentleman was not tortured. Have you had any meeting with the gentleman to provide the detailed information that you yourself stated on this program that he hasn't provided the
But
detail?
I think he just made mention of the fact that per the data or information available to him.
From who? From the police, from the security agencies. You see, there are three sides to every story. Culture says your side, my side, and the truth. If the gentleman goes to court, and he's a lawyer, they would take the evidences he's going to provide and the evidences the police will also provide, which more or less dispute the evidence, and then have a determination. But you see, my statement before he even came on, I said, look, you are a minister of state. You ought to be very cautious when you are communicating. My expectation, and I'm not trying to tell the minister how he should conduct his business, but my expectation was that, yes, this is a serious allegation. We will investigate it. If he's tortured, as he himself is saying that the conditions under which people are treated, we must all look at how we can reform and change those conditions. But you see, that is what I was expecting him to say. But what you just read, the UN definition of torture, it includes inhuman treatment. That's what you read. It includes inhuman treatment. And as long as we are signatory to that particular charter, there isn't any distinction, or there will be a very difficult thing to establish the distinction between what constitutes an inhuman treatment and a torture. Because what you read, constituting torture, includes inhuman treatment.
Or degrading treatment.
Exactly.
Or punishment.
They all constitute torture. So if he says that the gentleman, he thinks he was inhumanly treated based on the evidences that the evidences he's providing, that may be a distinction from torture. I disagree because this definition supports the position.
All right. Honorable Chiayabua, the final bit I want you to take, I don't know whether you'd like to respond to that, but the final bit I want you to look at is about reform when it comes to not just our prisons, but those held in police custody as well, police cells and all of that. You were talking about some initiatives. I mean, I've heard of Operation Efiase, which is prison-based. I've heard of I think the Pentecostal church doing some things. What more do you feel we can do to lessen the what people have to go through when they are put in, police custody. What more do you feel we should be doing as a system to make people be treated in, for lack of better words, more humane ways?
Thank you very much. Perhaps let me respond a bit to what the Honorable said. As a deputy minister, I know how to communicate. I communicate based on the facts at my disposal. I do not chase people who have just put out some form of allegation to get the evidence from them. If the gentleman is saying that he was tortured, it is his duty to provide the details of the torture. It's not the duty of the Attorney General, for that matter, the state, to call him and get the information. There are institutions in this state that are into human rights abuses. That's his duty. As to the information that we have, I need not disclose the information we have to the honorable member. That's what I'm supposed to do as a deputy minister.
So, of course, the burden of proof is on Oliver.
That is it, exactly. Exactly.
So on what basis did he say the guy was not tortured?
The burden of proof is on Oliver, just like any criminal matter. If the state says that Mr. A has killed, Mr. A need not prove anything. It's the duty of the state to get the information, the evidence, go and prove that kind of allegation. And the reverse is also true.
Can I ask
If you're talking about torture, don't expect that I will call, or the state to call Oliver and say, Oliver, come and provide the evidence where we can make a determination. What we have is not the case. It is the duty of Oliver to provide further and better particulars of his allegations. Nothing more,
Honorable Deputy
nothing
Minister,
less.
can I ask you a question, Honorable Deputy Minister?
You can.
Is it not also the duty and the responsibility of a Minister of State, such as the Minister of Justice and Attorney General, to ensure that citizens' liberties are protected at all costs, even citizens who are accused for having been engaged in anything that is treasonable? Don't you think that it is your responsibility to be concerned about the torture of a citizen of this country in the hands of security agencies? So your statement is suggestive that it is we against Oliver. My point is that regardless what Oliver allegedly indeed, the crime he allegedly committed, which is to be established anyway, don't you think that you have a duty and a responsibility to ensure that a citizen of this country, regardless any allegation made against him by anybody, that such a citizen's liberty should be protected, and under no circumstance should he be, tortured as he's claiming?
I agree with you that it is the duty, my duty, it is your duty.
So what is this business of Oliver has to prove?
Hold on. It is my duty, it is your duty to ensure that citizens' rights are protected. If a citizen says that he has been tortured, he must provide further and better particulars of that torture.
So even before that, you said he wasn't tortured.
For example, if you go to your Facebook page, and then you say, oh, the state has done A, B, C, D, Z, then you expect that the following morning, the state should be inviting you to get a particular. Then in that case, the state can never run. You can have millions of people who go to your Facebook pages and be posting all manner of stuff. It is our duty to ensure that people's rights are protected. If Oliver is able to come up with further details that show that indeed he was tortured, nobody will sit down and defend such a thing. But as I speak now, and with what we have now, there isn't the slightest evidence of torture. Perhaps he comes back later, and there's evidence, we match it against others, and they say this becomes the conclusion that he was tortured. We will go for it.
Honorable
now,
right.
Repeat.
Oh, last one. I beg you. Last one. I beg you.
This has to be the final one.
Yes, I need. Honorable
Final
Deputy Minister, you arrested the gentleman on the basis of what he posted on Facebook. You arrested him because he wrote something on. Yes. You are now telling us that that same gentleman is making an allegation, a very serious allegation of torture on Facebook. And then you claim that if you want to be reacting to what people put on Facebook, then the state cannot run. This is something that borders on someone's liberty, his freedom. That is borders. It's a very serious case. So if you could arrest him...
You are missing this point.
No, you said, Honorable Deputy Minister, You said,
now,
let me make myself clearer. You said that he wrote it on Facebook, and that your own words. If you want to be going after what people write on Facebook, then the state cannot run. And I'm saying that he was arrested on the same medium. Now, if you deemed it fit to arrest him on the basis of what he put on his Facebook page, why don't you think that it is equally important, in fact essential, to investigate a matter of a torture by security agencies whose comfort are provided by our taxes? Then you tell me that if you want to go after it, then the state cannot run.
All right.
Let me
so that'll be the final point.
All right. The final point I want to respond to is that if you post on your Facebook page matters bordering on criminality, the state will not sit aloof and allow you to go scot-free.
Torture also border on criminality.
Matters, I'm not saying torture. Maybe listen
I'm
to
saying
them.
yes, torture, alleged torture.
Oh, my brother, hold on. Matters bordering on criminality, the state agencies will have to investigate. Torture is something about fundamental human rights you complain about. And where do you complain? You lodge your complaint before the appropriate state institution for the matter to be investigated. Well, if it's about crime, the state will then have to take it up. I just want you to have it clear. If you post anything that suggests that you are engaging in a criminal conduct, the state will pursue you. If you post something to the effect that you are being tortured by the state, it is your duty to report it to the state for the state to investigate. As simple as that.
Honorable, we're immensely grateful for your time. I mean, I really appreciate the education that you've given all of us. Of course, some people also disagree with some of the points you make, but we'll be waiting in the coming days to see what further evidentiary, proof, if you like, that Oliver would put forward and see how the system reacts to those. But we're so grateful for your time, sir. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
And that is Alfred Tua Yeboah, a Deputy Attorney General. You still have some reactions, maybe in a minute or so.
My point is that, look, your definition of torture by the United Nations Charter for me suffices. The gentleman is the only person who can establish or otherwise that the conditions that he was kept amounted to a torture.
But hold on.
I'm coming.
Hold on. The point too is that if you want to establish torture, which is a grave offense, you would have to. It would have to be backed by some crucial evidence. And the point I'm making is we can't just listen to one side. That is why in law we say audi alteram partem. You have to listen to the other side.
I agree.
Else, if we implicate the other side too, without the necessary evidences,
that is not what I'm suggesting. If you had allowed me to finish. So for him to make such an allegation, and a minister of state whose comfort is provided by our taxes come without the full story and said that he wasn't tortured, I was expecting him that he would have gone back the words he used yesterday. Even today, this morning, you realize in defining torture, he avoided the mental aspect. And he did that for a reason. Now, I was expecting him to say that, look, it's a very serious allegation. We will investigate it to establish the truth or otherwise. Now, without any investigation, he made his conclusive position on the information he got from the very people who the gentleman is accusing for torturing him. How could that be fair? And he says that we cannot be going after what people put on social media. You have arrested the gentleman because he published something on the same medium. That one, you feel that if you make a criminal statement, between a criminal statement of alleged treason and a torture, in a democracy, I can tell you, the torture is even worse. Because the purpose for democratic governance, one is to ensure civil liberty so that you can have the wheels of democracy grinding very well. Now, when liberty is shredded, then you cannot be talking about democracy. And we live in a democracy. We are not living in a military dictatorship. And that is why I am disappointed the position he has taken. I am not saying that he should conclusively agree with what Oliver said. But what I'm simply saying, get all the facts. And don't we think that an allegation of torture warrant serious investigation? Now, another statement he made, which I didn't know whether I should cry or I should laugh. When he said that if Oliver is saying that the conditions that he was subjected to, he was isolated for that condition, then he cannot be talking about torture. It doesn't matter whether other people went through that and decided not to speak. Oliver has spoken. And in any case, he has a platform that the multitude of people who are going through same conditions do not have. So how better is it to make it known to the people of this country so that we can all work together in finding solutions to this? And I can tell you, this is not the first time we are having some of these allegations being made. You remember Honorable E.T. Mensah when the NDC lost elections in 2000? And he made a statement which had nothing to do with disturbances in this country. He was a member of parliament and a leading member of a political party. He was arrested and kept somewhere. I guess he would have described that as a torture. So who determines whether someone is tortured or not? I can slap you and you won't see anything wrong with that. You can think it's a joke. But you can slap another person and that person thinks that, no, this cannot be a joke. So I'm saying that as a minister, he's a person, to be very honest, I like him so much. Let me be very honest. But I didn't expect him to make the statements that he made. Another very important point, which I think ought to be reiterated, when he said that, yes, he's commending, you think, I guess the Pentecost Church, right, for providing a prison. We all need to commend them. It is the responsibility of the state, right, to improve the conditions of the prisons. And I'm not blaming only this government. Successive governments, I don't think that we have done much in improving the conditions at the prisons. Those young men and women who are incarcerated are still citizens of this country. So the conditions under which they are incarcerated should be a concern to all of us as a people. And that I disagree that we should just be asking civil society organizations, NGOs, and religious groupings or societies to be providing or improving the conditions. We need to take that serious. And let's begin asking ourselves, what has been the budget of the prisons every year under the Ministry of, I guess, Interior, right? Right. What has been the budget line for those ministries? And I think that when we begin to interrogate, we'll begin to understand whether governments are giving some attention or seriousness to it. Right. Anytime any politician goes there and comes out, or anybody such as Oliver, they will come out and tell us the conditions that Ghanaians are subjected to. Right. We discuss it, and that ends it. And I can bet my last penny. The next day when we have another person, they will raise, who has a platform, they will raise this issue, we will discuss it, and that ends it. This time around, we all need together to push it. Okay. And perhaps from Parliament, some of us may begin looking at ways by which we can force the state to improve those conditions. We need to do that.
Are you going to put, private members bill, or maybe file an urgent question? What are you going to do?
One, I will file an urgent question, one. Two,
on the back of this? On the back of this specific case?
Yes, on the back of this. Right. Because if the gentleman is alleging the conditions under which they are subjected, the moment Parliament will return, I will file an urgent question. The Minister for Interior or Minister for Justice and Attorney General must come and explain why, Ghanaians are subjected to that unacceptable conditions. And perhaps get a member of the committee that is responsible in this, and we'll begin working on a private motion bill to ensure that there is some improvement in the conditions of our prisons. Right. And I'll tell you one thing. In Tamale, and permit me just a minute. During the elections, I visited the Tamale prisons. The prisons form part of my constituency. I was flabbergasted the conditions that these prisoners were. I had to provide them with even nose masks. They didn't have. I had to provide nose masks. I had to provide some sanitizer. And President Mohammed's son, he has a foundation. He provided them with a lot of things. I'm saying that we all need to look at it. Go to the Tamale prison. I would challenge your reporters there. Even the rooms, go and check the zinc. I believe that those the roofing sheets. I believe those roofing sheets were put at the time when the prison they are leaking. The fact that those people are convicted doesn't make them subhuman, because conviction is to correct people. We have seen people...
To rehabilitate them.
Yes, we have seen people who came from prisons and they become scholars. We have seen people who, as a result of prison, they become imams, they become pastors. We have seen people who, as a result of their incarceration, they become contributing significantly, changing the conditions of people who are not in prison. We all have a collective.
So that point is made, and at least you're going to follow up.
We will do that
in Parliament. I just want us to digest two quick issues on youth unemployment and utility bills, which the service providers are saying should go up. I would have gone to the utility bills, but I want, because of the nature of the conversation, I mean, Fix the Country, they've been talking about many things, including youth unemployment. You look at the data over years, and I mean, the average was about 12.92% between 2014 and 2016, youth unemployment rate. This administration has said, and we heard from the Vice President last week, that they brought it down to 9% between 2017 and 2020, which is true. According to data from the World Bank. But when you consider the current data, that is where the devil is. Because we're looking at the unemployment rate for those between the ages of 15 and 35. And it stands at 19.7%, which actually represents a percentage rise of about 118%. Now, this is another situation that successive governments, especially in the Fourth Republic, have not been able to, relay. How do you respond to this? It's moving from bad to worse.
The NDC did far better, and I will give you the statistics. Check the ILO website. In 2016, unemployment in general was 6.8. 2017, it reduced to 6.7. And I remember at that time, I challenged this government that the reduction of the unemployment rate from 6.8 to 6.7 could not be attributed to anything that the MPP government did in 2017. Because policy interventions for the purposes of creating the needed jobs yield the results maybe a year after or 2 years after. Now, from 2017, when it reduced from 6.8 to 6.7, it started increasing. In fact, if you check, and don't take my words, take the 2022 financial statement, which was presented by the Minister for Finance. In fact, in the State of the Nation's address, the Minister indicated that unemployment in general was 8.4. Now, what happened, interestingly, in the 2022 budget when they presented it, they took away unemployment completely. They didn't even talk about unemployment. They only talked about youth unemployment, which was 12.6. 12.6. I guess the census that was conducted put it at over 19%.
Right.
Now, it tells you...
It's more than double.
And so it tells you that this government has failed. Because if you took it from 6.8, which you said President Mahama was incompetent, he didn't create the needed jobs, people were not recruited, jobs were not created, yet you are taking it from, in fact, that good state, because 6.8 was not that bad, to 19%. But what is also happening?
Right.
In the eyes of all the so-called jobs they claim they created, NAPCO, Planting for Food and Jobs, you see, I have been vindicated. I have maintained repeatedly that NAPCO never created the 100,000 jobs they claim they created. And I provided reasons why I say that they never created those 100,000 jobs. Because if you look at the budgetary allocation for the purposes of NAPCO trainees, NAPCO beneficiaries' allowances, I challenge the figure. NAPCO started in 2018. We were told that they were engaging 100,000 people. They were paying each 700 Ghana cedis. Multiply 700 by 100,000, it gives you 70 million a month. Multiply 70 million by 12, it gives you 840 million. When the budget was presented, I challenged the figure because in that budget, the NAPCO money was 400 million. The response...
Which was about half of...
It was not even up to half. And in fact,
what was expected?
With my experience as having been a Deputy National Coordinator for National Youth Employment Program, I raised questions. I said the 400 million included establishing regional and district offices, employing people to man them, and I said you needed not less than 200 million to do that. The response government gave at that time was that it was going to take care of the other budgetary allocation in the mid-year budget. Go and read the 2018 mid-year budget. NAPCO was not mentioned. So they never created 100,000 jobs. It was a scam. Take the 2020...
NAPCO was a scam.
No, the number of jobs they claimed they created was a scam. Because the budgetary allocation never supported that. Even allowances alone a year for the beneficiaries, they needed 840 million. And what they had in the 2018 budget was 400 million. And in the mid-year budget, it was never mentioned. Carry forward. 2022 budget which was presented. Do you know that the allocation they have for NAPCO? Once again, they claim they are creating 100,000 jobs. They have only 560 million Ghana cedis as budgetary line for NAPCO. Once again, when I raised this issue in Parliament, the response they gave was the same response they gave in 2018. We'll take care of it in the mid-year budget. And I can bet my last penny. Mid-year budget, NAPCO is not going to be mentioned because the 560 million Ghana cedis will not even take care of the 1-year allowances of 100,000 people, and 100,000 times 700 Ghana cedis times 12 will give you 840. So there is no any reason why we are having this. So clearly, it is only under this government. They claim they are creating jobs, NAPCO planting for food, yet unemployment rate in this country is soaring. And this is a danger to our peace and stability and to our democracy. Maybe many people are not aware. The reason why President Kufuor came out with the National Youth Employment Program was a survey which was conducted by the National Security. And the response was shocking and frightening. And that was the reason why they came with it. This government came back, and you know what they did? With all the establishment of regional offices and district offices and the Youth Employment Program, they left it. Because President Nanado didn't want to have anything to do with what President Kufuor started and created his own body. NAPCO is just a model under the Youth Employment Program, the paid internship model. So they didn't need to spend the millions of Ghana cedis creating another body. They needed to have strengthened the National Youth Employment Program. And I can tell you, for the 5 years this government had been in power, the Youth Employment Program only engaged community police. They never engage people, yet those people are there taking money. Clearly, it's one, lack of vision, two, uncoordinated policy interventions, and three, and most importantly, the interlinkages that ought to exist between ministries and agencies are non-existent. That you find a Ministry of Trade doing one thing, Ministry of Finance doing another thing, which are similar, Ministry of Local Government doing another thing, which are similar.
Jointed policy
Absolutely. So clearly, this is a monumental failure. This government has been deceiving the people of this country as to the number of jobs they have created. And no wonder. The president said they created about 100,000 jobs. The NAPCO boss said they created 117,000 jobs. And then the Minister of Finance said they created 92,000 jobs. Two of them certainly must not be telling us the truth.
Forget about NPP, NDC. How do we solve the youth unemployment situation in our country and bring it down to an appreciable level? In some 30 seconds, just go for...
First and foremost, sincerity.
The jugular.
Sincerity. Comprehensive and coordinated policy interventions. And three, corruption. Because the amount of monies that are spent, and when I say the political will and sincerity, check why government is introducing e-levy. They are telling us that they are using e-levy to create jobs for the young people in this country. Is that not what they are telling us? Do you know the
part of it will go into youth start?
Do you know the percentage of it that is going to youth start? Less than 4%. Are we being told the truth? Now, if you tell me that accept e-levy,
but for 4% is still an allocation, isn't it?
No, you can. In fact, the biggest justification for the imposition of this regressive, unacceptable tax that is described as pickpocketing of the people of this country is for the creation of jobs. And the policy intervention of government is youth start. NAPCO is abandoned virtually. Now you abandon NYEP. You abandon NAPCO now. You are creating another body called Youth Star. Why not look at the existing structures? Identify the problems those structures are facing. Find solution to those structures. And for me, that is the surest way of creating the needed jobs. Unfortunately, in formulating policies to create jobs for young people, government is engaged in what I describe as cartoon scenario reality. That yes, we would involve young people. Let's find out what your challenges are. And the moment those suggestions are given, they are never part of the final solution.
Right.
You can only find jobs for the people of this country if you involve young people sincerely. Unfortunately, that is not what we are experiencing.
At least we've heard of another a volunteerism drive, which was also just recently spoken of to involve the youth. Of course, that over the years will bring about the spirit of patriotism. And back then, you would admit, under Nkrumah and co, those were very vibrant. But
the reason why under Nkrumah people were so patriotic was that there wasn't serious political corruption by political elite.
Right. Though there was corruption.
No, but there wasn't as it is. We experience it today.
I just want us to wrap
the CDD on this. Described this government as the most corrupt under the Fourth Republic.
I want us to wrap on the tangent of utility bills and all of that. And maybe in some 2-3 minutes, maybe we can just digest the conversation. We've seen the reports on the SOEs and how even ECG and the Ghana Water Company Limited are bleeding. And we've had our own problems with these state-owned enterprises and how they function. They say that there are major state institutions, from the Finance Ministry to KIA to the University of Ghana to others, that owe them money. But on the other hand, they are saying that even the cost of operation has really shot up in terms of even the price of fuel and everything, and that they need to up the cost of providing their services. It will finally end up on the lap of the PURC. But what is your very quick take of that, on that, putting it side by side with the extant economic situation in some 2.5 minutes, if you can just...
Well, if I can just make this point, I would address that. Just, I don't want to forget. Do you know the number of jobs 5 million Ghana cedis can create?
5 million cedis?
Yes.
Maybe since you've been in that space, you could tell me.
5 million Ghana cedis can help create thousands of jobs. The Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources spent over 5 million Ghana cedis in what they describe as dialogue over
that has been disputed.
By who?
Some said 10 million and the rest, but
no, but
they have disputed that they spent.
No, I
read the story in one of the papers recently. We heard from the land minister. They've disputed.
Please, I am speaking. I am not talking about 10 million. I am speaking to what is captured in an official document in Parliament in the budget. 5 million Ghana cedis in dialogue. In what kind of dialogue? 5 million Ghana cedis, over 5 million Ghana cedis, in what they describe as dialogue over Galamsey. I mean, it's just unacceptable. Completely unacceptable.
Right.
And this 5 million would have created a lot of jobs for the youth of this country.
So
Oliver and Co are right when they are engaged in fix the country. The utility companies, and I guess they are making this, they're asking the PURC to adjust, if you like, the tariffs that Ghanaians will be paying. You do know we are still paying for the so-called water and electricity they gave us.
For COVID-19 relief?
Yes, we are still paying. You know we are still paying. Yet this government would tout itself as that we give the people of this country free water and free lights. For how many months? And it's not every consumer of electricity who benefited from the free electricity. For how many months? 3 months? 4 months? And we are still paying this money. This is thievery. Now, if you are taking all these monies, now you are now asking the people of this country to pay more. And I can tell you, I have been buying water. I have been buying water in my house. I have never defaulted paying. Sometimes I pay in arrears, but I've been buying water. So the people of this country...
Do you mean you pay in advance?
Yeah, sometimes I do. Because sometimes...
You said you pay in arrears, that's why I was...
Yeah, I'll pay in advance, sorry. Sometimes I look at it, you know, I pay through Momo. That's what usually I do. And that's what I will commend the Ghana Water Company for. You can pay through Momo. And paying through Momo, sometimes I'll pay extra 50 or 100 Ghana cedis. But sometimes the water doesn't even flow. You buy water. Now, people are not against taxes or tariff adjustment. But the tariff adjustment should come with improved services. So that if my taps run 24/7, then if I'm paying, I won't be hit for paying.
In a nutshell, you don't have a problem with their increasing the tariffs.
No,
how you're saying that the service...
No, I have a problem with the level. I have a problem with the level of increases. The justification is that they increased it only in 2019, right? The last time the increase was in 2019. At what percentage? What has been the commensurate increase in the salaries of workers of this country? 4% or less than 4%. Does it even make sense? You increase salaries of workers by less than 4%, and then you adjust tariff increases over 10%. It simply doesn't make sense. So they need to take a second look at it. And the PURC must understand that they are there to serve the interests of the consumer. That is what? One, to ensure that the efficiency and effectiveness that, you know, occasioned in the run of those the provision of those services. Whose responsibility is it to ensure that the water that is going waste as a result of dysfunctional pipes that they have, whose responsibility is it? Is it the consumer or it is the Ghana Water Company? It is the Ghana Water Company. Yet the consumer is being billed for the inefficiencies of those companies.
So all those things must be addressed.
Yes, it has to.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been, you know, a revealing conversation that we've had. Of course, Member of Parliament for Tamale Central, Murtala Mohammed, joining us. We also had Deputy Attorney General Alfred Chiayabua joining the conversation for our big stories. Now, we'll be coming your way with AM Business that is up next. Of course, it comes to us courtesy of EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank. Now, today, we'll be reflecting on how on the 1st of May, government will fully implement the electronic levy at 1.5%. On AM Business today, Charles Aite interrogates the impact the e-levy may cause for young startups. That's up next on the AM Show. Thank you for staying with us on the AM Show. On the last leg, we're going to have an exciting conversation as well with Professor Ransford Jampo, political science lecturer, University Don, if you like. It has to do with developments bordering on Albert Kandapa, National Security Minister, and his comments that, well, technically, justices of the higher courts, or the courts, so to speak, should not lean or be seen leaning in a certain direction, even if it has to do with his own administration, because it creates a certain perception. He's been taken on by some in the political setup, including the likes of Aikwe Otu, who is one of the legal brains in the NPP. But there are others who disagree. We've heard from the likes of Colonel retired Gbevulu Lati. But let's hear from Professor Ransford Jampo, who also has his take on this bit. Now, Prof, thank you so much for joining the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Great. You have said that the judicial oath is not, a godly oath. It is not as though you were bound to something in the Bible or the Quran. Can you expatiate on your thinking in respect of this? Because justices of the court are supposed to read what a case has brought per the law and deliver a verdict.
Well, I was a bit taken aback when I saw some senior lawyers saying that judges are always bound by the oath of office that they take. And so, to that extent, nobody can insinuate or imagine that they may do things that are untoward. And I said, you see, these are human beings. And so even if they take oath, the oaths that they take are not biblical or Quranic injunctions. Even biblical and Quranic injunctions, religious adherents are not able to stick to them. And so you would be believing like an ostrich if you think or if you argue that simply because some people have taken oaths, they would always do things that are right. You may just be not a serious-minded person, and you may not be analytically astute in trying to unravel or interrogate problems that may have been raised. Take note of this. So in my post, I've said that it is either the few very professional but politically hawkish people who have criticized Kandapa in his caution to the judges. It is either they are being too partisan or completely they do not know what they are talking about in their critique of what Kandapa candidly said and then his candor in his interaction with the judges. So I've said that it is true. Judicial oaths are not godly orders. They are not biblical or Quranic injunctions that are even flouted with impunity by religious adherents. They are sworn and can be broken by the very fallible mortals who serve the bench and the bar. So it is a fact. Let us admit it is a fact that there are some great independent-minded judges in Ghana, but we cannot pretend or suddenly be afraid to point out quite frankly and without mentioning words that clearly there are some Ghanaians who are also losing confidence in the judiciary And this is a major national security threat. They are losing confidence in the judiciary.
What do you think? What do you think is causing that loss of confidence?
The unanimity with which every decision that they take, bordering on the state and other parties that come before them, the unanimity with which they decide on those matters. And I keep asking myself, we don't know. Maybe those cases may not have been reported. But the point is, virtually every now and then that some people from the other side have issues that would have to be fought with the state or with the defendant being those in power. Those in the other side will lose. And when they lose, the verdict that always comes is unanimous. And it may well be true that they always have bad faith. It may well be true that they are not sensible enough to put out strong defense or strong cases before the judges. It may well be true that the judges are always right. But the point is this. Justice must not only be done. Justice must also be perceived to be done. So you do not have to see the unanimity with which they take their decisions in favor of the ruling party creates an impression. It may be erroneous, but it creates an impression that look, something untoward is happening. And when that happens, I know people, I don't know, you are a journalist, you may want to speak to people too and see. But I have spoken to so many people who are resolved that, look, given the way things are going, we would not be thinking about taking our matters to court. Some people have taken their matters to court and they were able to foretell the outcome of the process. And I'm saying that if this thing is not checked, it creates a serious national security problem.
But Prof, the judges cannot rule on political lines. They cannot toe political lines. And at the same time, they must only operate with the facts that they have available. They are constrained.
No, that is not the case. That is not responsible judicial. How do I put it? If you say that they must always follow what the law states, legalism, then there are instances. You see, it makes the judiciary irresponsible. But there have been instances in other countries where judges, and even in this country, where judges have stuck to only what the law says, and their repercussion, the socio-political repercussion, had been bizarre. And so the point is that, yes, you must look at what, if you ask the judges and you ask the lawyers and the law students, they will tell you there are two schools of thought, judicial activism and judicial restraint. Those who favor judicial restraint say that always stick to what the law says. But there are also justices or legal luminaries who also believe that even as you stick to what the law says, you must also practice or entertain or have room for judicial activism, where you look at also common sense and the implications of your overly legalistic pursuit of the law. Because, look, you may follow strictly the law to do something, and then the socio-political backlash will be such that tomorrow you cannot have the opportunity to sit as a judge. And so the point is, why do we always say, is it always the case that every time that a case is brought before the judge between the ruling party and those in opposition, every now and then the ruling party has a strong case. Every now and then the opposition has a very bogus case. Can it always be so? So why can't some of the judges also try in an attempt to ensure or you create that impression that, we are not so biased? Why don't they also look at the facts of the matter and give at least a majority decision?
Right.
But always you are unanimously deciding in favor of government. And let me tell you, Kandapa is not a small boy in Ghana's politics. He is the national security minister. He is privy to information that those who are criticizing him do not know. He knows information that even the judges, the justices of the Supreme Court, they don't know. And so if he is telling them that, this and this, when Kandapa goes to sleep, we would all be in danger. He employs people and he knows where he gets his information as a security minister. And so if he is coming out to say some of these things, he knows what he's talking about.
Okay, so Prof.
It's not up to political hawkish people to take issues with him. You see, we must not offer partisan defenses and partisan oppositions to everything.
Right.
There should be an elite consensus on some of these things beyond which we would agree, elite consensus on some of these things that we would agree not to disagree over. Because this is national security matter.
So
if
Prof,
we don't take care and people decide that, look, we will go to court and say we'll take matter into our own hands, there will be implosion, there will be chaos.
So just give me a yes or no answer. So basically, you want the judicial system to hearken to what Kandapai is saying. They should listen to him and apply his wisdom.
Well, he's giving them a wise answer, and I am of the view that he's a national security minister. He knows what he's talking about. He's privy to information that they themselves may not even know.
So should they listen to him? Should they listen to him?
He said, don't always, if you always are seen to be ruling in our favor, there will be chaos.
Okay.
And so the point is that he should be listened to.
Okay. Prof, we're really grateful that you took the time to join us, share your thoughts with us this morning. Professor Ransford Jampo, who is with the Political Science Department at the University of Ghana. As we wrap the conversation, we know water is life. Water regulates your body temperature and keeps you alive and kicking. Awake is premium purified water treated through a strict purification process to ensure that every bottle on the market refreshes you better. We have the perfect sizes for all occasions. 330 ml, 500 ml bottles to fit your pockets and bags, 750 ml for the heavy drinkers, and 1.5 liters for those who always want more. But there's more. We have introduced our special 19-liter jars for offices and homes. Now, you just need to stay awake with Awake Purified Drinking Water wherever you go. Come on, grab a bottle of Awake Water and get quality hydration. Awake Purified Drinking Water, one for life. Also remember, for every bottle you purchase, an amount is donated to the National Cardiothoracic Center. Awake is produced by Casa Preco. For bulk purchases, please call 0262 351 251 0262 351 251. And maybe to wrap the conversation, now, did you know the income of a young entrepreneur from some selected businesses is exempt from tax for 5 years? Any young entrepreneur engaged in a host of activities: manufacturing, information and communications technology, agro-processing, energy production, waste processing, tourism and the creative arts, horticulture and medicinal plants, does not need to pay any income tax on these activities for their first 5 years of operation. Here's the breakdown. If you are engaged in business that enjoys an initial 5-year concession, you benefit from the following applicable tax rates for an additional 5 years. Accra and Tema 15%, other regional capitals outside the 3 northern regions 12.5%, outside the other regional capitals 10%, and in the 3 northern regions 5%. For further clarity, just interact with the GRA, and of course, they will answer all the questions you have. Ghana Revenue Authority, integrity, fairness, and service. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. Thank you so much for joining the conversation with us this morning. Happy birthday once more to Anastasia Edu. That's how we wrap it up. Catch me again on JoyNews Desk at 10.